guest today is JP Ross. He hosts his podcast, Who Dares Wins.
Yeah.
And we met not too long ago, but I go to this meditation group in the city called Wake Up New York. And before I went to the meditation group, it's in the Lower East Side. I stopped by at this coffee shop. It was a Think Coffee, I believe, that you and this other guy Shay that I met in there were working in it while I was there before the meditation group, and then we got into this conversation about like how, and I mentioned that like I was kind of on a path of centering myself more and kind of finding what my focus is in life rather than being kind of uncentered and looking in other external things beyond myself or my own truth and for fulfillment. And then you were talking about your story about like how you said that you went through rehab and you were involved in the hardcore scene, and then you found Christianity and your faith to be what centered you. And you were talking about just like your path with that, and how before you were looking for fulfillment, I guess, in vices or external things, and then you kind of went more towards the path of being centered with your religion. And I thought it was like a very synchronistic meeting. And like, I know you had your interpretation that like, that was like, because, you know, God, and to me, like I have more of a view of like synchronicities, I guess, kind of like Taoism is sort of like what my beliefs go towards. But I did think it was like an interesting coincidence that like I stopped in there and we got into that conversation as that's what I was thinking about. But anyway, I'll let you introduce yourself more and kind of tell your story and your perspective and like how your beliefs were shaped by your experiences and everything.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. So I'm JP Ross. I'm from upstate New York. I live in Jersey City. My Instagram is JP is lavished. And my podcast is called Who Dares Wins. You can hear it on Spotify, Apple, all those things. I'm working on some video stuff in the future. But my background was I was a hardcore kid. I was into punk and alternative music and all this stuff. And honestly, like, you know, my parents were Christian, and so they were always telling me about God. And I was like, oh, I don't want to hear it. And then, you know, it's like they kept trying or something. And then I would be listening to music, and over the years, I would be like into church and then not into it. And then I never really, like, to me, had a relationship with God. And as a Christian, that's what we believe, is you have a relationship with God through Jesus. And I just remember like, man, I'd be like doing drugs and smoking weed and like doing all these things. And I mean, honestly, they never gave me any fulfillment, but yet I just kept doing them because I don't know what else to do. And then if I stopped or like I try to be straight edge, you know, my insecurities and my anxieties had me really, really chained or kind of imprisoned into people pleasing and like wanting to be accepted by a group. And so if I was around drug folks, I'd be like, or like people that do drugs or whatever, I'd be like trying to tell them to like stop and like, you know, go straight edge. But then I went through a struggle in my life and I was like, straight edge don't help either. And, you know, no disrespect to my straight edge brothers and sisters, man, because it's an awesome way to live. But I feel like when I don't know, I went through a lot. And when I called out to God, I really felt like this peace that surpassed all understanding. And that peace gave me hope and courage to face my life. And as I faced my life, I mean, yeah, like everything changed. Yeah, everything changed after that. And I mean, I think it was like mostly about just like calling out to Jesus. I remember like I was So I've been in like shelters, I've been homeless in the past, and I was in jail, and I remember like holding the Bible and being like, I don't even know what this means. Like, what is this talking about? And I threw it, and I was like, if you're God, give me peace. Like, I've never known peace. And I kid you not, man. I kid you not, man. I felt like a peace, and I was like, wow, like you're real. You're real. And I remember like leaving where I was and I went and told everybody, like I was like, yo, God is real. Like I have peace. And they're like, dude, we don't care. Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, no, he's real. I can't prove it. Like I don't have science, but but I just feel how I felt. And before I wanted to die, before I didn't really have a reason to live, before I didn't know how to like succeed at a plan or anything, or how to have a relationship. Really, um, I really, I really was just like, all I know how to do is like steal and lie and cheat, and then like when this hope happened, when I felt that peace, I was like, I want to learn more about that. So that's why I started looking into that more.
Oh, I think my friend Harrison here, who's helping out, might has a question.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to ask because I was kind of raised similarly, but I found peace in um, work and like sports instead.
Mm.
And I'm only asking because would that do anything with being social at a younger age, or because my brother is similar. He grew up more punk, and I grew up as the athlete. And when I was younger, I pushed him away, and I feel I shouldn't have, because now that I'm older and more mature, I realize that it was a mistake. I don't know if I feel like sometimes
Yeah.
just finding a group to connect with is the best thing, and it's not a problem. I love how you found peace in religion, and religion's not a bad thing. I mean, it really isn't. But
Yeah,
I
sure.
sometimes a
I
lot
was
it does
thinking.
involve the human consciousness.
Mm,
Well, I guess I
yeah,
was wondering is that peace, or is that God really something separate for us, or is it like a higher thing within us? Like to me, I guess I like I've looked at all different religions, and I guess through my understanding, what my interpretation has been is like what Jesus or the Buddha are talking about is something kind of like it's more of an allegory for like a higher self within us that goes like the higher route rather than just like engaging in the vices of the lower vibration or like the neediness or like being uncentered. And the higher self is kind of like it's a representation of like a higher level of human consciousness, because I guess that's how I view kind of religions, is like allegories of human consciousness.
I love that description, but also like it is like for some people it's easier to put Jesus there for you because like my ex-girlfriend, her whole family was very religious, and at the time I was I was very religious, and it helped a lot of the time. I feel like time periods matter for every situation. It depends who you are, where you are, and who's around you for certain things with religion.
yeah, definitely, definitely, that matters for sure. I think also, just like I think there's different genres within the Christian kind of thing, religion. I look at it more as a relationship, so personal relationship with Jesus. I believe that the Bible teaches and Jesus teaches that really I can do nothing good of myself, but with him, as him as my Lord, I can do all things. Philippians 4:13, I believe, says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And I believe that that helped me stay clean. That helped me to go after getting help to get my brain together. I don't know that's how you say it, but I had ADD and stuff, and I was like because of that sort of like
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, because of that like kind of like anchor I had, which some people would say, yeah, it's like a crutch, and I'm like, yo, man, it's okay, man. I need help walking. That's okay. And because of that, I was able to get the help I needed. And then I hated school, but the Bible says to do all things as unto Christ. And so I was like, wow, then I need to be good. Like I need to be great. And so I got my GED, and then I went to college. And I feel like throughout that progression, there's there's yeah, there's different seasons and different roles and different types of things that I've been with God that
Hmm.
can seem more like classical Christianity or stuff you might have heard. And then there's other times where it was like a struggle. It was like I felt like I was in the wilderness, and all I had was that my belief, but I really felt like I didn't have a lot of evidence to stand on.
So it's
But
like
I
something
just felt,
to hold on
yeah.
to, like when there's nothing else, kind of like it's always there.
I I think
But,
I think it's kind of like that. It's like I don't look at it like there's been times where I'll have nothing, where it seemingly I have nothing else. But to me, having a relationship with God, and it don't, I mean, everything else could be whatever, but having a relationship with God is how I get it all back, you know? And also, like, being in a relationship with God is like I could lose it all, but I'm still going to be okay because, like, the plumb line for my life is intact. And I feel like, when I used to go to something in the Lower East Side called Dharma Punks,
well, I've
and we
been
would
there. Yeah,
meditate.
yeah.
Yeah, and we would meditate, and I read Noah Levine's book, and I loved it. I mean, I don't know if I love that group, but I love that book. And I love that book because he was a punk, you know, and he really understood that in his quest to be like a monk or something like that or whatever, he was just like, man, like I just can't get rid of the material world.
Hmm.
I'm just like, and
It's
then
interesting
he
because it says the same
created
things like
something
in the
else.
Eastern traditions, kind of like it's like in the Eastern traditions, it's like the non-attachment and not being that consistent bliss that's there regardless of whatever's in the external world. It's interesting how like all religions and like spiritual beliefs, though like in on the surface they seem different. They have like maybe different belief systems and stuff. Like there's those certain things that kind of connect them. And I think my friend Harrison has something to add.
Oh yeah,
I totally agree with what you're saying, and I loved what your friend said with us in the podcast because it's funny because it's the people who are spiritual
Yep.
resort to confidence, and religion go to Jesus because I've dealt with both, and I've been more religious, but if you flip the coin, you realize it's, oh shoot, it's in my head. It's all getting told to me by myself.
I can see that.
It's weird. It's
Yeah,
a very
I can see
weird.
that.
It,
Yeah.
that's why I can't disagree with you because depending where you are and
Like we all kind of create our own truths. I guess that's what you're kind of saying. Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah. I also wanted to say too, just from your question or thought about sports and like punk and stuff, it's like one of the things that I liked about when I got into hardcore is that in the 90s, it's like sports and punk like went together, because it was like
Literally,
punks
you're
and
not
metal.
wrong.
And also I liked basketball, and it's like we like
I
football. This is
agree.
like all the jocks and everyone together, jocks with
I
mohawks.
was born in '96, so everyone who was amazing at all the sports were the punks and frickin' everyone who were against the. I don't know how to word it, but
I feel you. But I think it's also important to understand too. Like I think like, although it might have felt like you, or maybe you did, or like you pushed away your relative or your brother or something. It was a season. It's just like a time, and that like one of the things about time is that like, you can always restore those relationships. You can always work on restoring those relationships. When I got into punk, I loved basketball, but all the punks at that time, before I knew about hardcore, all the punks at that time didn't like sports at all. And I was like, oh man, I gotta hide that I like basketball because I like these punk kids.
yeah.
And then it's like, I got a little older and I was like, who cares? Like they all like, like we're all doing sports. We're all doing whatever. It don't matter. It's like nowadays there's bands like Turnstile, and it's like, wow, like I can't believe we ever sat on different tables, because this band is basically saying everyone's good.
I just find it interesting that both sides, spiritual and religious, have the same. You want the same thing, and it's all about all of us coming together at one point. But it's so hard with so many human brains in this damn earth.
But that's why I find like Neville Goddard is someone who like I read a lot, who's interesting. Like he references the Bible a lot and like talks about the allegory, but like he talks about like how like God is really human imagination and human consciousness. So it's like we're all kind of like, it's that higher like creator part of us, and I guess it manifests in different ways, but it's like the same self. It's like the same truth. It's like, and Rumi, who was like a Sufi poet, had that poem that said like the lamps are all different, but the light is the same, and that kind of makes me think.
Because that's also why religion is so stern on getting people to connect.
Yeah,
it's why there's a history of war and everything about religion, because they just want the best for people, but some people don't understand because of their spirituality or other differences, but people don't want to come together. That's the hardest thing about human brains. Some people don't connect, some people do.
Yeah. And some people are and then I feel like when people are kind of rigid and like they just are like in their own way, and like they only want to be around people who think exactly like them or see things exactly their way.
Sort
that's
of
like
not
a
good.
Closed offness to them. Like they're not. There's like a disconnectedness to them that like, and that you can kind of feel that energy. Like
one of the things I was thinking as you were both talking was perhaps like connecting into spirituality or Christianity or religion or whatever is like maybe a way of tapping into that 10%. Like they say we use only 10% of our brain, and maybe it's like tapping into the other percentages that like we don't normally tap into on a regular basis, because it's kind of like a higher plane, a higher way of thinking. And it's kind of funny because in essence, it's like we all kind of want the same thing, and then at the same time it's like, but the problem is us, and like we get in the way. And it's like, instead of making peace, like Romans chapter 14 in the Bible says, do what is for the mutual upbuilding of the believers. So it's like on one side of Romans chapter 14 is talking to the Gentiles, and another part is talking to like the Jews or something. And he's just like, bro, you both love God. Like just love each other. Just love each other. And I think ultimately it's one thing to speak peace, but another thing to live that out.
And I thought that was interesting. Like you kind of made me think like how, even though like it seems like like you have like your beliefs, I have mine, and like Harrison has his. Like I feel like there's still a universal truth like we're connecting on, even though like we have like these different ways of like finding it. If that makes sense, that's just like what you said. For some reason, kind of made me think that like.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think we definitely have to be okay with diversity. Diversity, different ways of thinking, different ways of approaching things. It's like if you were to come into my space, you would see an authentic expression like mine. I come into your space, we hear an expression like yours, like this podcast.
Oh, Harrison was just telling me to move over a bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I could have my assistant. He's like my Jamie on Joe Rogan. Well, Jamie's the guy who Googles everything, but
yeah. But perhaps,
yeah,
yeah. That's why I said Tim Dillon earlier, because Tim's I don't know if that guy is with the show or not anymore, but he used to be, and I felt like he kind of checked Tim, like just kind of like, hey, do this, do that, Man, I saw Tim Dillon years ago in the back of Beauty Bar in the city, and I was like, this guy is hilarious, and now he's huge. I was like, wow,
cool.
Pretty crazy.
Cool. I also wanted to say about the way you said how like everyone just either goes to God and himself. That's what I love about the difference. Like you both are saying, it's everyone wants the same thing, but where nobody wants to
talk to each other.
Their pattern, so to say, and which is
that makes sense.
It's just weird. It's not, so to say, you.
I mean,
or
I don't.
That's the weird description. It's not you, and it's not me. It's just it's
humanity.
It's
like probably something dead guy sang about. Fixation on a coworker.
The upbringing and the way people look at life. There's certain experiences that put you different directions.
Yeah, and it's like it's like I don't think we'll ever like fully come to an agreement, because it's like what makes us unique and diverse is our own convictions, and like being true to your convictions means that you're gonna have things that like you're sort of like, I'm not going to see eye to eye with like another perspective that is a different or different than this conviction. And it's like, but I think for the ultimate good or the ultimate purpose or plan, it's like we can agree, So one of the things to sort of encourage that or give meat or a body to it or something, is that I used to be part of this like interfaith group, and so it was like Hindus, Christians, Jewish folks, let's see, Jewish folks, Christians, just like a group of different people, different leaders in the city, and we worked together to get things done in New York. And one of the things we collectively noticed was that we have power and space to get things done in the name of faith. And so we would use our faith or the faith of our practice or how we interpret it to come together to work to get things done, whether it's like a living wage bill or, more sustainable future for New York, food justice, stuff like that. Yeah. And so it kind of made sense, even though like at length, we weren't in complete agreement, but we were in agreement on the things that we wanted to get done. And I think that's a good compromise.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's like different ways you get like different paths to like getting to it, but like the end result that you all want, you accomplish great things, and that's good. So
and it's
the religion. That's the beautiful part.
Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, that's like pretty cool.
Hopefully hopefully one day we'll all see one God together.
Yeah. And then we'll eat popcorn and
we'll get the truth eventually, because there are so many ideas. But
we'll watch this show that I've been watching lately, which is an old show, and it's Blacklist. I feel like there's such good writing on that show. Bro, it's so good. Oh my goodness. I feel like it always catches me by surprise. And then the other day my friend's like, "Oh yeah, I knew that was gonna happen." I was like, "How do you know that's gonna happen?" But I don't know. Maybe he's gonna be a show writer in the future. I was just like, I don't know, how do you know that was gonna happen? No one knew that was gonna happen. But yeah, I think like at the end of our lives when we transition, we'll it might not be what we thought it was going to be at all. But I mean, I have faith and I believe in what I believe, and I'm sticking to it. But I'm also open to the fact that I'm like, hey, I don't know,
And I was just thinking about what you said about earlier about like how you were engaging in the vices and everything, but like at the same time that kind of led you to be the person who you were. You wouldn't have been on the path you're on now if you didn't have those years where you weren't centered and you weren't and you were so maybe that like kind of happened for a reason. Like you can't really have one without the other. You can't have the light without the darkness.
I used to joke with people. I joke with people at church that without sin, you don't have any character, like sin adds character. And so, or like missing the mark of God or whatever. But yeah, those vices I think are very much a big part of what became my personality. And so like through that journey helps me to connect with multitude of people. And I think that's what's really good is like if we can really be connected to our journey, connected to our story and what's happened in our lives, that helps us to be relatable and even like help people, you know what I mean? And whether we have an ultimate truth or not, it's like our stories are what connects us, And I feel like before I had a church, I used to go to AA and NA meetings, and because church wasn't raw enough, but I'd go to meetings and I might not have the same struggle as the speaker, but I connected with the rawness of the depth and the desperation of wanting to be a part of something greater than himself or herself,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I had another friend that said that like AA kind of inspired like his whole spiritual, like a way, like his views and everything. So.
Yeah.
And what is your views about the afterlife? Like, do you believe like as far as like, do you think that, like there's like only a heaven like for Christians, or what is like your beliefs as far as that goes?
Well, as a Christian, I believe that all those who believe on Jesus will be present with him in the afterlife. And then there's some, I don't know if I don't know if I'm completely sold to the idea of hell. So I'm still learning about that, but a lot of Christians believe that if you're not with Jesus, then you're in the other place. But I believe that God is a loving God, and I don't know. I feel like in a lot of ways, God makes a way for us to be with him ultimately. I know for me, that's my belief. I mean, my grandpa passed away, and I was like, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna tell my grandma like, hey, like I wish him best. You know what I mean? It's like, nah, like, we believe the promises of our belief is that we will be present with God. I mean, it says that the thief on the cross next to Jesus asked, "Will you remember me in paradise?" And Jesus said,
he was the one they
"You'll
set
be
free,
with
right?
me."
Like they set him free instead of Jesus. I think that was a story, right? Like Barbara.
Yeah. Barabbas.
Barabbas.
Yeah. They were like, "Give us Barabbas." Yeah. And he was like a political prisoner. And like probably, he was a thief and stuff like that, but like the more greater context is probably for political reasons. But yeah, Jesus tells him, you'll be with me today. in paradise.
Yeah, I like that's a good view about it. Like what you said, like how even if like you have your belief about God, you think that God's like loving, so like you don't think like people who wouldn't necessarily be Christian would go to hell or whatever. Like maybe they'd go to where they believe, or like there's um I like that. I like that view you have about it, because it's a more kind of open view. Like it's less because I feel like when people get into my religion's the right way, and anybody who doesn't believe in it, they're going to hell or they're going here. That's kind of like it's more exclusionary. Like it kind of it feels alienating to people who don't believe that. But I feel like with you, with your beliefs, like you have your beliefs, like I don't share your beliefs, but I feel like it's easier to like connect in that way, because then it's kind of like, okay, like you still like I'm still like free to be me too, but like you have your truth. Like I just like that. So
Yeah, yeah. It's like I just feel like it's a harsh point of view, and I just, the more I know God, or think I know God, that's not God. God's character is love. That's God would not punish you just to punish you. I just don't believe in that. I do believe though that there is something, like if we reject him, love or whatever, or like the sacrifice of Jesus, there are things, but I don't know if I would be able to. So I'm always like, my goal when I'm out there and I'm like sharing my life with people, or doing outreach, or preaching or something like that, I'm like always trying to encourage people to get to the other side. Like let's not waste any time on thinking about that place, because honestly, we're alive. Like we won't know until we die.
and that's
Sadly.
interesting, because I know there's a lot of Christians that like don't share your view, that are more focused on the afterlife, and I think that's interesting, and I like that you're kind of focused on this life and making this world better. So.
Yeah. It's like I definitely want to be with God, but I mean, the Apostle Paul says, I'm not sure exactly where, but in the New Testament, he says that it's better for me to be with you than to be away, or something like to be. He would give up his life. He's been beat up by Rome and stuff like that, and he was like, it's better for me to stay, to be with you. So I kind of feel like that. Like I'm like, it's better for me if I'm alive to be focused on how, like, okay, so there's this band called August Burns Red, and they have this line in one of their songs where they say, stop dwelling on what happens when you die. Start helping others while they're still alive. And it's like, that's the gospel. Like that's it. That's the truth. You know what I mean? Because it's like, while we're worrying about what happens when we die, the earth is dying. Like, it's like there's a lot of changes we could be making, instead of thinking like we're going to get a new earth, because God or something. It's like, bro, no, he's not going to say that, man. That's a political thing to get some votes.
It's like even in the Bible, like that world is his creation. So wouldn't he care what happens to it? Like that's his creation too. I mean,
absolutely. Yes, according to my belief, he created the world. He created the world, so he cares about it. I mean, that's why he flooded. That's why we believe in the flood as a believer. Like we believe in the flood because he wanted to save the earth. It's like he's like, I'll get rid of it all, and then I'll give you a promise of a rainbow, and then it's just like, which is my promise, I'll never flood the earth again, like to destroy it.
Well, there's probably going to be another flood soon, because like humans are messing up the world pretty bad right now. So he's probably going to. If that's the case, he's probably going to send another flood like pretty soon.
Well, I mean, that original flood destroyed the whole world. Yeah, man. I mean, if that was to happen, then I'd be like, oh man, I'm like really questioning my beliefs. I'd be like, God, you promised. I was like, it's not looking good.
The believers were all ready, but
Yeah, man. Yeah. But it's really important though that like when we met in the coffee shop, that it's really important though that we do find those things that help us to get centered so that we can be the fullest expression of ourself that we can be.
Definitely.
And I mean, I think about my life without God and without those types of things, and also learning from other people who didn't share the same beliefs. I mean, they still taught me stuff, you know? And then like going to school, I'm like, dang, I can't believe in high school I was like, school is terrible. Because when I went to college, they're like, oh, just write a paper about it. And I was like, oh, snap, word.
Just telling you.
Yeah, you were.
I was just talking
Yeah.
to Sean about that before you started.
Yeah.
That was why we got an education.
Yeah. I'm doing another whole podcast about that, like the education system.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Gee.
So, any final thoughts or things you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, man, it's been really, really good. I'm really thankful for the opportunity. Thankful for you to just like really going in this direction. And I can tell from our conversation at the coffee shop and here on this podcast that yeah, your thoughts and your intentions are to learn more about the deeper things, and like what that looks like. What does centering look like? What does bettering ourselves look like, and how do we better each other and learn from each other? And so I'm really appreciative of that, and I'm glad that you gave me a space to talk about faith and things of that nature, which sometimes is not really accepted.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad I had you on too, because like I think this makes the conversations more interesting when there's like diversity in like what people think and what's said. But like, but then when we find some kind of like commonality, I'm not a fan of like debates or like, oh, who won this or who. I'm a fan of
Yeah.
like discussing different views, but kind of finding that what is the common thing we can agree on while respecting like our differences at the same time.
Definitely love it.
And where
Yeah.
can people can keep updated on Spotify and everything with your show? Or
Yeah, so you can right now you can listen to old episodes. It's on Who Dares Wins podcast. It's it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's on like all these other things that Anchor FM offers. It's like so you just go on there, or you can go on my Instagram at JPIsLavish, JPISLAVISHED. And and I don't know, I got a TikTok, but it ain't doing too well. So you can hit me up on Instagram. The link's in the bio. And thanks for listening. Appreciate
no problem,
it.
man. And
Awesome.
if you want to keep updated with future episodes of Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff, I'm on Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcast. But also, I'm working on getting on iTunes, but they're annoying with the whole cover art rules. And also, you can follow me on social media as for my podcast, it's Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff, or just look up Sean Kneese, SeanKneese, like Instagram, whatever. I share my podcast there too, but also other stuff I'm up to. And that's about it for this episode. I'll catch you on the next one.
Let's talk about the deep stuff.
Hell yeah. All right, is that the stop button there? Look at using the external